Hey there, this is Adrienne Lopez, the Integrative Awareness Coach, and I'd like to welcome you to the most recent adaptation of my weekly podcast, now entitled Lifting the Veil. I'm so glad that you're here. I created it as a platform for people to investigate the nature of their consciousness so you can embrace your destiny, not suffer your fate. Today I wanted to talk to you about the ego triangle. And so I'm sharing an image below this video file or the sound file, however you come upon it. But I've included a picture, an illustration of the ego triangle, and then a picture of the comic, which I've shared several times in the past. And we've been going over these two images in regards to perspective and how the ego, according to the ego, there's only a certain way of looking at life, which is based on separation, where it gets to play either the role of the victim, the hero, or the villain, or any three in combination, depending on the situation and the different roles of the people in your life and how they're showing up and what they're needing to learn. So in a world of duality, which we live in, the victim sees itself as either the winner or the loser. That's the duality, which of course is not necessarily the full picture. It's missing something. And so this is where we get the opposition of, say, the empath and the narcissist. It emerges out of this false premise, which operates in a whole range or spectrum of severity, depending on where we are at in our healing journey. But it's all a product of an inaccurate or incomplete perspective. We are missing, or the ego is missing, part of the picture. So let's go use the example of the empath, the people pleaser, or the narcissist, the bully, the aggressor, one who uses dominant energy to get what they want or to get their needs met. And when you take a look at this from the ego, he or she is the king or queen of pain, because both sides of this coin are motivated from the same underlying belief system. But both are trying to get their needs met using different strategies, which are either I'm going to ignore my own needs to please others because I'm scared of being abandoned. I need you to love me. Or I'm going to bully my way through things to get what I need. But both come from trying to prove or show that we are valuable as an individual, we're important, we're worthy, we're deserving of love, or that we matter. So which one's worse? Is it worse to be a people pleaser or to be a bully? Well, when you really look at it, big picture, pulling back the lens, neither. They are both at the core motivated by the same sense of lack, which is a unreality. And I wanted to talk to you about that today. And in order to do that, we need to slow this process way down, because it's become so automatic that it becomes, or it appears to be, real. So today I wanted to take a more detailed look at the mental, emotional processes that result in either being a victim or a villain or a hero as a reaction to the false premise of I'm not enough, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy. They're all different versions of the same thing, which is lack. So today I want to expand that space between the stimulus and, if we're on autopilot, the reaction. And if we're bringing the light of awareness, we can transform that reaction into a thoughtful, meaningful response, not one based from an unconscious behavior that is based on false premise. So, this is why meditation can be so powerful, because it helps us create a space between this stimulus and reaction. And we need to practice this when we're not in the hot seat, so to speak, because when we are in the heat of the moment and we are revved up by what feels or appears like an outside threat to our being, we don't always have the ability to authentically choose our response, because all of our evidence, or the ego's evidence, points to what we've lost in the past. In fact, the ego is a product of loss, which at a certain level is a form of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or a trauma response. And I call it this not lightly, but because it's an area in our life where we go unconscious to avoid feeling pain. So when the mind goes unconscious, it makes huge, often instantaneous leaps of reason, or the opposite. It's actually not reasonable when you really start to break it down and slow it down. And so I like to refer to this as on autopilot, because we've been trained this way, this particular response or reaction, I should say, since we were children. So now we do it naturally, because we don't even have to think about it. It's already set up, pre-programmed in our mind and in our physiology, in our body. So it seems natural. More importantly, it seems true, because we've been doing it for so long, even though it's not. So the awakening process is the process of bringing awareness, the light of awareness, to these darker parts of our consciousness that we're not aware of our thought process or our beliefs, or how we're using our imagination. I image my state of being, or my nation. I image myself by default. It wasn't by default originally, but it became default. By default, my world and what I'm capable of and what I can have is being determined by past programming that I put there and then I forgot about. Just like I like to use this example of the chair in your bedroom, right? We all have a chair or a sofa or something in our room where we pile clothes on one after the other, and then we forget what we put on the bottom until we start cleaning it out. So it's the same with our consciousness, except it has a lot more repercussions than just a chair in our bedroom, because it's affecting how we live our lives. So this is a big deal, because you are bringing awareness to areas of your consciousness that have been clothed in darkness or hidden in separation from a time since you were a child. So yeah, this is going to take some bravery and some courage, but if you weren't ready to do it, you wouldn't be here listening to this. So I want to welcome you and thank you for being here and having the courage to keep listening and to prepare yourself to do this work. So I want to give you an example. It's always easier to take these abstract concepts and apply them to a real example in our lives. So let's say something is happening. I'm interacting in a situation with someone, maybe a family member or a mate or somebody on the road who cuts me off, right? If I'm dealing with a family member, usually those patterns are well established because I'm entangled with them, ingrained in unconscious patterns and scripts that I inherited that, as I mentioned, have been in place since I was very young. And so let's say they say or do something and I automatically, because I'm on autopilot, default to my childhood programming because there is pain there. And the pain, what keeps the behavior in place or unconsciously in place, is the false belief, which causes the pain. I am not enough, for example. It hurts because it isn't true, but the ego thinks it hurts because it is true. And now I don't have to actually even think it. It just becomes part of who I am, even though in reality I am God consciousness in a body. But since I was created in the likeness and image of God, I get exactly what I asked for energetically, whether I'm conscious of it or not. So this is the place where we get lost because we go, as I mentioned, unconscious. And so we must bring the light of our awareness to this place instead. And light is simply information of the truth, which is unconditional love. So someone says, as I mentioned, or does something that triggers me. It may be a behavior that they use to manipulate or control others, unconsciously, of course. So in that way, they are mirroring our unconsciousness to get what they want. Because this is how the ego believes it wins. When it takes energy or attention away in a situation, it thinks it's winning. But it's actually just reinstalling the belief, the be-life, or the belief in a lie, which is separation. Adding another layer of delusion. And it's actually just reinforcing the belief or the habit or the unconsciousness through action. And this can be related to our karma or our sanskaras, what we do unconsciously without thinking. Usually installs a pattern which reinforces a habit, whether the premise behind it is true or not. It doesn't matter. So right before I act, I have a small opportunity, a window, to make a decision, to respond. And before I do, this is the place where I have to begin a new practice or a regular practice to stop and to ask myself some questions like, why am I acting? Or am I reacting? Or what am I telling myself about this situation that is making me feel unsettled or ill at ease or upset, for example? You see, because all of our problems or the conditions or situations we find ourselves in our life were created by us because they serve us, or we wouldn't have them. All right, I think that's all for now this week. Please remember to tune in next week on Friday when I drop the next podcast for part 2 of the ego triangle, where I will discuss some strategies for navigating these waters of consciousness regarding the ego. Please make sure, if you'd like to find out more about my work, to check out my website at www.mindheart-space.com. You might also be interested in joining my Invoke Signature Club. It is a private group where I offer information, strategies, practices, and coaching regarding our own relationship to consciousness and how that shows up in our lives. Until next time, please remember what a valuable treasure you are, and I'll see you real soon. Bye for now.